Hello and welcome to Uzreport World News, and my name is Bahram Ghafarov. Uzbek President Shavkat Mirziyoyev on Friday received the chairperson of the Kazakh Senate, Maulen Ashimbayev. The further development and deepening of the multifaceted cooperation between the two countries was an agenda of the meeting.
President Mirziyoyev with satisfaction noted the current high level of bilateral friendship, good neighborliness and strategic partnership achieved through regular and effective contacts at the highest level. The chairperson of the Senate, Maulen Ashimbayev, expressed sincere gratitude to the President of Uzbekistan for the warm welcome and conveyed greetings and best wishes from the President of Kazakhstan, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev. Since the beginning of this year, the trade turnover between largest economies of the region has grown by 40%. Major cooperation projects are being prepared and implemented in the mechanical engineering, textile industry, transport, tourism, and other sectors of the economy. Programs in the cultural and humanitarian sphere have been resumed. The importance of the active participation of Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan parliaments in developing the long-term agenda of cooperation, promoting new initiatives and specific projects with a broad involvement of regional administrations and business people, as well as strengthening cooperation and coordination on the current regional and international issues was emphasized.
The Uzbek government over the next 2 years plans to channel around $300 million for the development of the Aral Sea region. The funds would primarily be directed to projects to improve drinking water, protect public health and employment, the environment, as well as irrigation and reclamation systems in the region.
Once the world's fourth largest lake in area, the Aral Sea started disappearing in 1960s, at a time when the Soviet Union turned the region into one of the biggest cotton suppliers in the world. The catastrophe profoundly worsened the socio-economic, environmental and health conditions of the local communities in Central Asia. Countries across the globe have offered their help in the revival of the region. Germany earlier this year said it would spend €8 million towards projects in the region. The UN General Assembly last month declared the region a zone of ecological innovation and technology. The Assembly called on member states, the United Nations and international financial institutions to develop and implement environmentally sound technologies, including energy and water-saving technologies, in line with the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development.
The first Vice President of the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, Göran Richtering, will lead a delegation of senior management to Uzbekistan from 7th to 9th June 2021, according to the organization's press release. The EBRD delegation is to meet Deputy Prime Minister, Minister for Investment and Foreign Economic Affairs, and EBRD Governor Sardor Umurzakov and Deputy Prime Minister Jamshid Kuchkarov in the capital, Tashkent. Richtering will also open EBRD's new regional office in Urgench in western Uzbekistan. He will sign infrastructure and financial sector projects and launch several initiatives which will promote environmentally friendly measures and contribute to Uzbekistan's objective of achieving carbon neutrality by 2050. Uzbekistan has entered the list of the most active buyers of Russian food products, according to the Federal Center for the Development of Exports of Agricultural Products under the Ministry of Agriculture of Russia. The organization's calculations showed that since the beginning of 2021, Russia has exported agricultural products worth about $11.8 billion, including oil and fat products, cereals, fish, meat and others. In the survey presented by the Russian organization, Uzbekistan was placed ninth with a share of imports of 2.4%. The main importers of Russian agricultural products were China, 13.9%, Turkey 12.8%, and the European Union countries and EU countries 11.9%. Uzbek ambassador to the USA and Canada, Javlon Vahabov, held a meeting with the leadership of the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom. Commissioners Nadine Mainzer and Nuri Turkel welcomed Uzbekistan's progress in guaranteeing religious freedoms in the Republic. The parties highlighted the importance of 5 humanitarian operations implemented within the framework of the country's Mercy program that helped during back more than 530 Uzbek women and children from the armed conflict zones. On December 2, 2020, following the International Religious Freedoms Act of 1998, as amended, the U.S. Secretary of State removed Uzbekistan from the special watch list, determining that it no longer engaged in or tolerated severe violations of religious freedom. Uzbekistan registered 88 cases of early marriages in 2020, down 97% year-on-year. According to Hamid Abdurrahmanov, Deputy Director of Mahala and Family Research Institute, early marriages were more common in the Samarkand, Namangan and Andijan regions of the Republic. Series of public opinion polls among brides conducted in Samarkand in February 2021 revealed that 70% of early marriages were related to parents' will, and only 26% of respondents married for love, some 22% to improve their financial situation. 38.2% of brides stated that their health had deteriorated as a result of early marriage. In 2019, the Uzbek government raised the minimum legal age for marriage of women from 17 to 18, which has drastically reduced the number of early marriage cases in the Republic. Uzbekistan imported $113.7 million worth of passenger cars in January and April 2021. According to the State Statistics Committee, imports were made mainly from People's Republic of China, $39.5 million, Republic of Korea, $30.4 million, Russian Federation, $22.1 million, Kingdom of Thailand, $6.6 million, Federal Republic of Germany, $3.3 million, Republic of Poland, $3.1 million, USA, $2.8 million, Japan, $1.8 million, Republic of Kazakhstan, $1.7 million, Republic of Lithuania, $1.1 million. During the reporting period, the Republic spent $3.4 million on the import of electric vehicles, the committee added. The Central Bank of Uzbekistan has made a decision to issue new Uzbek soums, denominated banknotes worth of 2,000 soums and 20,000 soums. New money are set to be produced from 14th June this year. New banknotes are dedicated to the Great Silk Road and the history of the ancient city of Bukhara and the Republic of Karakalpakstan. A special element made in purple, located on the right and left edges, is intended for people with poor vision, and due to the relief of the image, makes it possible to determine the value of denomination by touch. Jizak Petroleum, one of the largest vertically integrated oil and gas companies in Uzbekistan, signed a four-sided memorandum of understanding with Russia's Gazprom Bank, State Development Corporation Web.RF, and the Russian Agency for Export Credit and Investment Insurance for the financing of new greenfield gas chemical complex based on the methanol to olefins technology to be built in the Bukhara region.
The MOU establishes a framework for potential future cooperation between the parties with respect to the financing of the project and the insurance of the risk related to the facility in the amount of $800 million preliminary. Jizak Petroleum was named a major investor in the project late last year. The $2.8 billion gas chemical plant, one of the largest and most complex in the CIS region, is regarded as key to the future monetization of Uzbekistan natural gas through the production of export-oriented, high-value-added gas chemical products. Nigora Ibanova, Director for Strategic Development, Jizak Petroleum, said, "The MTO project on which our team has been working for about 2 years is a great example of the modern Uzbekistan, where great attention is paid to projects to create a value chain and the production of finished products, import substitution, which in turn gives a positive impetus for the development of future-related industries and the creation of new workplaces. This project will become the core of the future gas chemical cluster, which will be assigned the status of a special economic zone, the first of its kind in Central Asia. When completed, the complex is expected to annually process 1.5 billion cubic meters of natural gas and produce high-quality polymers used in many sectors of the world economy."
Uzbekistan imported twice more cement during the first quarter compared to the same period in 2020, according to data from the country's statistical committee. During the first 4 months of 2021, the country imported 1 million tons of cement, worth around $50 million.
The main exporter was Kazakhstan with 498,300 tons. Around 278,500 tons were delivered from Kyrgyzstan, 234,700 tons from Tajikistan, and 10,800 tons were brought from Iran. Most of the product was imported by the capital city as massive construction work is underway in Tashkent. The Uzbek government, in a bid to reduce the prices of new houses, has zeroed the customs duty on imports of cement products from April the 1st to December the 1st. Before that, the duty was 30%.
Uzbekistan and Tajikistan discussed a railway line construction that will connect Samarkand region of Uzbekistan with the Tajik city of Panjikent. During the meeting between Uzbekistan Transport Deputy Minister Abdusamad Muminov and Tajikistan Transport Deputy Minister Shoista Said Muradzoda, the project on laying the railway section Bulungur Station, Jambai Station, Factory Station, Panjikent was discussed. Another issue was also raised regarding the draft agreement between the governments of two countries. Dangerous goods transit through Uzbekistan's territory. The air communication restoring possibility between the two countries was an agenda in compliance with epidemiological requirements, as well as the cargo transportation recovery through the Bekabad-Istiklal-Bekabad railway section and road cargo transportation through the Pata and Darkhan checkpoint. In the last 5 years, the Uzbek government has made significant steps towards gender equality. Alas, the legislations will seem to remain in the state of limbo, and the country still has a long way to go concerning gender-based violence. Uzreport TV has recently organized a talk in the form of a live broadcast with the participation of bloggers and activists in the protection of Uzbek women from discrimination and domestic torture.
Uzbek women facing violence at home have been in plain sight for years, and their rights have always been trampled. Even now, the situation is not any better. So many videos of violence and suicide among women went viral on social media as the vivid proof of mishandled system set up in protecting women's rights in Uzbekistan. However, since the beginning of Shavkat Mirziyoyev's presidency in 2016, attempts have been made to improve women's rights, at least legally. The government set up the Women's Committee in 1991. President Shavkat Mirziyoyev signed a decree that aims to fundamentally improve support for women and strengthen the institution of the family. The law criticized the current situation with women's rights and their participation in the state affairs. This decree also created the Family Research Center, which aims to strengthen marriages, investigate problems faced by modern families. Staff at the center held research across the country, talking to women about violence and their own family situations. Few years back, Uzbekistan has removed fragility from freedom of speech to a certain degree, and its citizens are now discussing social and political issues openly. Victims now see journalists and bloggers as the source of hope. Since the government does not seem to be protective enough, thousands of Uzbeks are now voicing their concerns, and Uzreport TV has gained mainstream credibility to disclose the issue.
There are still families living with the concept of raising daughters who are supposed to be nothing but decent homemakers. There is actually no need to prepare them only to do housework. Technology has highly developed various types of labor-saving machines. We might as well educate them to become successful career ladies. We still haven't fully understood what our women are experiencing. Most of the violent cases remain unpunished due to corruption. When in 2018, Women's Committee opened a hotline for women who had experienced domestic violence to dial the number 1146 to ask for the protection, the initial calls were made by men asking why they are provoking women upheaval. This really means that men do know they are treating their women unfairly and are afraid of being punished. That time, the committee received thousands of calls from women as well. Treating women unfairly at home has become kind of tradition, handed over generation to generation as children witness the situation at home.
One of the best ways to prevent family conflicts and save women from harm is to educate them. Mature and educated women mostly handle conflicts with a decent manner and are able to compromise. We can also give Singapore as an example, which raised women equality to a high level. The country's president Lee Hsien Loong asked the population to encourage women's education as they are the ones who stay at home and educate their children.
The first in-person meeting since the health crisis for the group of 7 finance ministers could be on the verge of producing a breakthrough. Economic leaders from the G7, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the U.S., and the U.K. gathered together for talks on Friday and are, quote, just 1 millimeter from a historic global tax deal being pushed by the U.S., French Finance Minister Bruno Le Maire told the BBC. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, on behalf of the White House, proposed a minimum global corporate tax rate of 15%, which is below the lowest rate of any of the G7 nations. A particular focus of the minimum tax rate are the big international tech firms like Amazon, Facebook, and Google parent Alphabet, which are adept at exploiting the differences in varying corporate tax codes. British Finance Minister Rishi Sunak.
It is increasingly clear that in a complex global digital economy, we cannot continue to rely on a tax system that was largely designed in the 1920s. And I would just say this. The world has noticed, and I believe they have high expectations for what we all can agree over the coming days.
A deal could raise tens of billions of dollars for governments, offsetting the big spending done by many governments to prop up their economies during the health crisis. Finance ministers speaking to the press were optimistic that an agreement could be reached before talks wrap up on Saturday. Germany's Olaf Scholz told the BBC that when a deal is reached, it, quote, will really change the world. There are, however, some major hurdles to clear, including what the minimum tax rate should be and how the rules should be drawn up to ensure that companies pay their fair share of taxes. Any agreement between finance ministers lays the groundwork for more intense talks next week when their bosses, presidents, and prime ministers gather in England. Whatever is decided would then need to have buy-in from the wider G20, which includes the world's richest nations as well as developing economies. That group meets in July.
The truth is out there. We just don't know what it is. That's the message of an unclassified government report out later this month on UFOs, or what are now known as Unidentified Aerial Phenomena, or UAP. According to the New York Times, U.S. intelligence officials have found no evidence that UAP, observed by Navy aviators in recent years, were alien spacecraft. But the sightings remain unexplained in the highly anticipated government report. Citing senior administration officials briefed on the report, the vast majority of incidents documented over the past 2 decades did not originate from any American military or other advanced U.S. government technology. The Times said U.S. intelligence officials believe experimental technology of a rival power could account for at least some of the aerial phenomena in question. Public fascination with unidentified flying objects has been stoked in recent weeks by the forthcoming report. With UFO enthusiasts anticipating revelations about unexplained sightings, many believe the government has sought to discredit or cover up for decades. But senior U.S. officials cited in the Times article said the report's ambiguity meant the government was unable to definitively rule out the possibility that the unidentified phenomena were extraterrestrial.
Facebook suspended Donald Trump from its platform for 2 years on Friday, a response to recommendations made in May by its independent oversight board, which upheld Facebook's initial suspension of the former president following the January 6th Capitol riot, but said Facebook was wrong to block Trump indefinitely. Soon after the announcement, Trump said in a statement that the decision was an insult to those who voted for him in the 2020 election, adding, quote, "They shouldn't be allowed to get away with this censoring and silencing, and ultimately we will win. Our country can't take this abuse anymore." Earlier in a blog post, Facebook said Trump's suspension was effective from the initial date in January and his accounts will only be reinstated if the risk to public safety has receded, adding, quote, "Given the gravity of the circumstances that led to Mr. Trump's suspension, we believe his actions constituted a severe violation of our rules, which merit the highest penalty available under the new enforcement protocols." Facebook also announced changes to how it will treat all rule-breaking world leaders in the future. In one reversal, it's ending its policy that shields politicians from some content moderation rules because their content is considered newsworthy. It will also disclose when it does use that exception. CEO Mark Zuckerberg had long argued that the company should not police politicians' speech, but Facebook and other social media companies have grappled in recent years with how to handle world leaders and politicians who violate their guidelines. The timing of Trump's 2-year suspension means he won't be able to use his Facebook and Instagram accounts ahead of the 2022 midterm elections, when Republicans will be competing for congressional seats, but may be able to return to those sites well before the next presidential election in 2024.
The Greek island of Astypalaia has received its first electric cars from Volkswagen in an experiment to revert the entire island to green energy. Here's Volkswagen's chairman, Herbert Diaz.
Today we are pressing the start button to electrify this island.
The electric vehicles will be used by the police, Coast Guard and airport authorities as part of an effort to replace about 1,500 cars on the 100 kilometres squared island. There will be subsidies for the island's 1,300 inhabitants to buy electric vehicles, bikes and chargers, and a total of 200 electric cars will be available for locals and tourists to rent. 12 chargers have already been installed across Astypalaia, which currently meets its energy demand almost entirely by diesel generators. Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis, who has made green energy a central plank of his post-lockdown recovery drive, said he hoped the experiment could be extended to surrounding islands and other parts of Greece to support the country's goal to cut carbon emissions by 55% by 2030.
The future can be glimpsed in some surprising, some unexpected places. Take this small, rocky island in the western part of the Dodecanese archipelago, more than 2,000 kilometers from Volkswagen's high-tech plant and headquarters.
Greece has relied on coal for decades, but aims to close all but one of its coal-fired plants by 2023.
What we are doing here represents one small but very important cog in our collective effort to solve the world's climate emergency.
Drone shots of central Paris could end up being rarefied archival footage. Police have been systematically rejecting requests to fly over the French capital, according to professional drone operators such as Javier Dupupi.
Actually, we're almost being banned from working. It's an abuse of power from someone in a dominant position. Some people are struggling quite a lot financially. This is really affecting us. It's affecting all of us.
Paris is classified as a no-fly zone for drones by law, but operators have been allowed to fly within the city in recent years, as long as they submit a formal request to police. That is until January, when operators say authorities suddenly changed their stance. So why the U-turn? Operators say it's a tit-for-tat measure, after France's Constitutional Council took issue in May with drone usage by the police, deeming it an intrusion on people's privacy. Emmanuel Veer is the Secretary-General of the SNJ Journalists Union.
It's a perverse effect and an absolute scandal for the prefecture because they themselves cannot use drones to spy on protesters to be intrusive as declared by the Constitutional Council, and that's why the council rejected this use of drones as it is. And so to make everyone pay, the prefecture will place a ban concerning all drone operators to use drones in their line of work. It's an absolute scandal.
The Paris prefecture has declined to comment on the ban, which civilian drone pilots say is hurting livelihoods and Paris's reputation. Owner of Skydrone production company, Marc Didier.
At the moment, Paris is the only city in the world over which we cannot film, and Paris is quite an important city on a global level, with its monuments, with its history, its culture. And no one can take drone images of Paris at the moment, so everyone resorts to stock images or try to live without, but actually, many are just living without, and it's such a shame for the reputation and for the image of Paris.
JP Morgan, which had halted political donations following the January 6th siege on the U.S. Capitol, will resume its contributions with one major exception. It will continue to freeze donations to Republican members of Congress who voted to overturn President Joe Biden's election victory. That's according to an internal memo on Friday seen by Reuters. The pause will last through the 2021-2022 election cycle, which includes November's midterm elections. The bank, the largest lender in the U.S., will then review whether to resume contributions to those lawmakers on an individual basis. JP Morgan, led by longtime CEO Jamie Dimon, had donated through its Political Action Committee to what it described as a handful of the 147 GOP lawmakers who then went on to vote to overturn the presidential election result. Since the initial corporate backlash over the Capitol siege, which prompted many companies, including fellow bank Morgan Stanley, to pause political donations, corporations have been grappling with how to resume PAC spending. JP Morgan's PAC gave nearly $1 million to federal candidates and committees backing them during the 2019-2020 election cycle, according to the Center for Responsive Politics, with nearly 60% of direct donations going to Republicans. Commercial banks overall have ramped up political spending in recent years, dishing out $14.6 million to federal candidates in the 2020 cycle, the second highest amount since 1990.
These are Bali's coral reef stars. The hexagon-shaped steel structures have live coral fragments attached, designed to encourage new growth in damaged areas. And this is conservationist Pariyama Hutasoit giving the reef stars a clean. She and her non-profit Nusa Dua Reef Foundation have installed almost 6,000 of them in an effort to protect Bali's reefs from climate change and human impact.
Kondisi terumbu karang secara global mengalami penurunan.
The conditions of coral reefs globally have worsened due to various factors,
Faktor diantaranya adalah
including destructive fishing, sedimentation due to mass development on coastal areas,
sedimentasi, pembangunan pesisir,
and climate change, which clearly has a huge impact.
Mempengaruhi climate change, itu jelas sangat mempengaruhi.
The Indonesian archipelago harbours more than 75% of the world's coral species, many of which are facing erosion and bleaching every year. Only just over half of Bali's coral reefs are considered to be in good condition, with 30% in poor condition and the remaining 15% in very poor condition. A lack of education is also to blame for the demise of Bali's reefs, says local fisherman Inyoman Sadnya.
I will be frank and not cover up the truth. Our parents' generation didn't have jobs, and the area here used to be arid, and sometimes it was difficult to even find food. So because of that, my parents resorted to coral mining to mine for building materials because they didn't know better. We were not educated about this issue back then, so now it's regrettable to see this.
According to Hutasoit, the Nusa Dua Reef Foundation is working on community outreach programs to educate local residents about the importance of the area's reefs. And she said there are still more reef stars to come.
Currently, I don't have a target for Nusa Dua except for planting new and replacing the dying coral.
Apa penyulaman atau replanting lagi untuk karang-karang yang mati.
But we have a target for northern Bali, and we are aiming to install about 5,000 reef stars over the next 5 years.
Reef stars selama jangka waktu 5 tahun ke depan.
We do not have any other goals in mind. But if possible, we want to expand our conservation work for the restoration of coral reefs outside of Bali.
Juga melakukan restorasi karang di sana.
Tech stocks drove Wall Street higher Friday as investors welcomed a tepid jobs report that cooled inflation fears. The data indicated that the labor market was improving, but the report was not robust enough to point to rising inflation that could prompt the Fed to hike interest rates. Portfolio manager Eric Clark of Rational Dynamic Brands Fund says the payroll's increase of 559,000 in May was just right for investors.
It's more of a potential Goldilocks scenario where interest rates don't have to rise and the Fed doesn't have to act too quickly. And, tech stocks have been kind of, a little unloved lately with growth underperforming value. So I think this is a little bit of a sigh of relief rally.
The Dow added 0.5%. The S&P 500 rose nearly 0.9%, finishing a hair shy of a new closing record high, while the Nasdaq jumped 1.5%. All three indexes made gains on the week. Shares of high-flying AMC Entertainment ended a wild week of trading with more gyrations, dropping almost 7%. Still, they managed to nearly double over just the past 5 days. Shares of billionaire William Ackman's Pershing Square Tontine Holdings dropped 12%. It's in talks to buy 10% of the world's biggest label, Universal Music Group, home to artists like Taylor Swift and Lady Gaga.
So far, these have been the latest news for today. Goodbye, take care.